The car won't start. A pipe bursts in the middle of the night. Your laptop dies right before a deadline. While most people panic, curse, open Google, or immediately call someone for help, there's a certain type of person who stays completely calm. They just stand there, listening, watching, testing a few things. Then they start tracing the problem step by step, like the thing in front of them isn't a disaster at all, just a puzzle waiting to be solved. You definitely know someone like that. Or maybe you are that person, the kind who seems to have the superpower of knowing how to fix everything. But the truth is, this ability isn't just about being handy, having lots of experience, or binge watching too many YouTube tutorials. Behind it is a completely different way the mind works. When other people see problems, they see clues. When other people want to escape the problem, they move closer to it. So what's really going on inside the minds of people like this? Today, Apex is going to break down the psychology behind people who always know how to fix things. Welcome back. Let's get started. To understand people who know how to fix everything, we first have to let go of the usual ideas of being handy or smart. In psychology, there's a core concept that explains this phenomenon, identified by psychologist Albert Bandura back in the late 1970s: self-efficacy. Put simply, self-efficacy is the belief that I'm capable of doing this. But here's the important part. It's not the kind of blind optimism that says, everything will work out somehow. It's a much more grounded and specific kind of belief. When faced with a pipe spraying water everywhere, a person with strong self-efficacy doesn't think they're some magical genius. They think, I may not know how this pipe works yet, but I'm capable of figuring it out and dealing with it. From a neuroscience perspective, this is closely tied to how the prefrontal cortex, our brain's control center, interacts with the amygdala, the part that sends out fear signals. For most people, when a small disaster happens, the amygdala starts screaming, "Danger! Panic now!" And that alarm basically shuts down logical thinking. But for fixers, their prefrontal cortex is especially good at regulating that reaction. They use a mechanism called cognitive reappraisal. Instead of seeing the situation as a threat, their brain labels it as a problem to solve. Bandura discovered that this belief changes everything, from how long you'll keep struggling with a stuck screw to how much energy you'll put into studying a wiring diagram. People with low self-efficacy tend to quit at the very first obstacle because they believe the outcome is beyond their control. Fixers, on the other hand, see difficulty as proof that they need a different approach, not proof that they're incapable. And this self-efficacy isn't some gift handed down from the heavens. It's a psychological structure built slowly over time. So when was the very first brick of that structure laid down? We need to go back in time to understand where this superpower really comes from. Why do some people grow up believing the world is something that can be fixed, while others see it as a chaotic mess they can't control? The answer lies in what Bandura called mastery experiences. Think about what happens when a child fixes something for the first time and succeeds. They dry off a water-damaged toy, and it works again. They smack the remote a couple of times, and the TV suddenly turns on. They tie their little sibling's shoelaces tight enough that the kid stops tripping. That moment creates something inside them that has nothing to do with the TV or the shoelaces. It's a shift in perception. The child has just learned a deep lesson. The world isn't just something that happens to me. It's something I can reach into, affect, and change. Every small success like that, such as tying their own shoes, rebuilding a collapsed Lego tower, or fixing a slipped bike chain, rewires the child's nervous system a little more each time. Their neurons start building a familiar pathway: problem, then observation, then experiment, then result. People who know how to fix things are often the ones who built up a huge collection of these mastery experiences when they were young. As adults, whenever they face a corrupted file or a dead car battery, they don't see the problem as some isolated disaster. Deep down, their subconscious flips through thousands of old case files and quickly reaches one conclusion: I've solved puzzles before, and this is just another puzzle. Research shows that these mastery experiences are the strongest source of self-efficacy by far, much more powerful than praise from others or simply watching someone else do something. It's the feeling of, I fixed this with my own hands, that really sinks into a person's identity. It helps them develop a healthy relationship with uncertainty. But the interesting part is that people reach these mastery experiences in very different ways. There are actually two completely opposite paths that can lead to the same result: the ability to handle things on your own. When we take a closer look at the lives of people who are good at fixing things, we usually find two very common childhood patterns. The first path, empowerment. This is the ideal scenario. The child grows up in a safe environment where adults act more like guides than people who do everything for them. Do you remember asking your parents a question, and instead of giving you the answer right away, they said something like, "I'm not sure either. Let's open it up and see what's inside." In developmental psychology, this is called scaffolding. Adults create a safe structure where the child is free to make mistakes. On this path, resourcefulness is built through fearless curiosity. The child learns that mistakes are not disasters. They're just data points. When a lamp doesn't turn on, the dad doesn't yell because the child broke it. Instead, they check together to see if the plug is loose. That child grows up believing, "I have the right to interact with this world." Their confidence comes from love and encouragement. The second path, survival. This is a very different path, darker and much more painful. These are children who grow up without help. Maybe they grew up in a family where the parents were too busy to care. Or worse, parents who couldn't even take care of themselves. A child learns to make their own meals at 7 because it's the only way not to go hungry. They fix an old bicycle themselves because nobody is available to drive them to school. Psychology describes this as the development of an internal locus of control through adversity. Psychologist Julian Rotter spent years studying this idea. These children learn a hard lesson very early. Luck and fate are not going to save me. Only my own actions will change the outcome. The resourcefulness of this group doesn't come from pure curiosity. It comes from survival. They are forced to become fixers because, to them, helplessness feels dangerous. And even though these two paths are completely different, one built through empowerment, the other through survival, they both lead to the same special ability that outsiders often mistake for confidence. But under the microscope of psychology, it's actually something very different. There's a very common misunderstanding. We see someone calmly fixing a computer with a burned-out motherboard and think, "Wow, they're so confident. They must know for sure they can fix it." But that's not really true. In fact, you could almost say the opposite. They actually have no idea what's going to happen. The real difference lies in something called tolerance for ambiguity. In cognitive psychology, this is the ability to accept and process information in situations that are unclear, contradictory, or don't have immediate answers. People who struggle to fix things often have a very high need for cognitive closure. When something breaks, uncertainty itself feels threatening. They immediately need answers. Can this be fixed? How long will it take? What do we do now? The anxiety created by missing information freezes them in place. Fixers, on the other hand, have learned how to sit still inside that uncertainty. When they look at a tangled mess of wires, they feel just as overwhelmed as anyone else. But instead of letting that confusion turn into panic, they treat it as the starting point. They can separate the discomfort of not knowing from the act of searching for a solution. They accept that the next 15 minutes might feel frustrating and confusing, and they're okay with that. Psychologist Ari Kruglansky, who studied the need for cognitive closure in depth, argued that people who tolerate ambiguity tend to think more flexibly. They don't rush to grab the first solution that pops into their heads. They're willing to test, fail, and then try another direction. You see, what we call a superpower is really just nervous system endurance. It's the ability to keep a cool head while your heart is still beating fast from uncertainty. But if we look even deeper into the motivation behind fixing things, we'll see that the world of fixers is actually split into two very different halves. One, the type who fixes things out of genuine curiosity, the curious fixer. These are the people we might call natural-born scientists. To them, the world is a system of fascinating rules, and broken things are opportunities to discover how those rules work. The distance between not working and working feels exciting to them. You'll see this kind of person take apart a perfectly good clock just to see how the gears move inside. They don't fix things because they have to. They fix things because they want to understand. What we learn from being around people like this, being around a curious fixer can completely reshape the way we think. They teach us that broken is not a permanent fate, it's just a temporary condition. They don't look at a cracked phone screen and see a financial disaster. They see a hardware structure waiting to be replaced. Their presence takes the drama out of problems. Quietly, they remind us, everything in this world was made by someone, which means someone else, including you, can also understand it and fix it. They turn anxiety into curiosity, and that's a pretty amazing transformation. 2. The type who fixes things as a coping mechanism, the coping fixer. Now we need to talk about the darker side. This is the part Apex really wants you to pay attention to. Some people know how to fix everything, from broken pipes to other people's emotional breakdowns. Not because they love machines or psychology, they do it because they cannot tolerate the feeling of helplessness. Earlier, we talked about children who were forced to survive on their own. As they grow older, their nervous system becomes programmed with one belief: if I can't control the situation, I'm in danger. For this type of person, when something breaks, especially the emotions of people around them, it triggers intense anxiety. They rush in to fix things because that's the only way they know how to calm themselves down. They become people pleasers, hiding behind the image of being capable and dependable. What are the signs? They can't relax. Even when you say, leave it alone, we'll call someone tomorrow, they still hover around the problem, restless, giving advice nobody asked for. They need the issue solved right now so they can feel valuable again, so they can feel safe again. And if you see yourself in this description, Apex wants to tell you something directly. Sometimes not being able to fix something, or needing help from other people, is not a character flaw. The reason you always feel the need to carry everything on your shoulders may not be because you're stronger than everyone else. It may be because, at some point in the past, you were hurt when nobody came to help you. You're wearing armor that's way too heavy just to protect the scared child inside you who still fears uncertainty. And remember this: your value is not measured by how many problems you can solve for the world. If you realize that you are the kind of coping fixer we just talked about, the person who feels responsible for every broken thing in the world, from a burnt-out light bulb to a friend's sadness, then maybe what you need right now is not more fixing skills. What you need is permission. Permission to stop fixing. In psychology, the burnout that chronic fixers experience often comes from a state called responsibility overload. You believe that if you don't step in, everything will fall apart. But the truth is this: the armor of being the person who always knows what to do is getting too heavy. Apex wants to share a path that can help you free yourself. Step 1. Separate your self-worth from your problem-solving ability. The biggest mistake a fixer makes is identifying themselves with their usefulness. You start thinking, people love me because I'm helpful, and that creates a hidden fear. If you can't fix something, then you become worthless. Practice something called awareness without action. The next time you notice a problem, instead of jumping in immediately, try standing still for 5 minutes. Watch your own discomfort as you look at something broken without doing anything about it. Tell yourself, I am still worthy of love and respect, even if this faucet is still leaking. You are not a human toolbox. You are a human being. Step 2. Learn the difference between empathy and absorption. Neuroscience research on mirror neurons shows that humans naturally absorb other people's emotions. But remember this: you can empathize with your friend's pain without feeling responsible for fixing it. Learn to say, I can see that you're hurting, and I'm here with you. Period. No advice. No trying to repair the situation. No desperate attempt to stop them from crying. Sometimes, when you try too hard to fix another person's emotions, you accidentally take away their chance to grow through that pain. Step 3. The 24-hour rule for non-emergency problems. The nervous system of a chronic fixer is often stuck in a state of hyper-arousal. To calm it down, practice intentional delay. If something is not an immediate threat to safety or survival, force yourself to wait 24 hours before stepping in. That pause gives your prefrontal cortex time to realize, oh, the world didn't end just because the printer stayed jammed for one day. It helps move you from survival reaction mode into conscious choice mode. You fix things because you choose to, not because anxiety is forcing you to. Step 4. Accept intentional brokenness. This is the hardest step, but also the most freeing one. Allow some things in your life to stay imperfect. Maybe it's a crooked kitchen cabinet door you never bother fixing. Maybe it's a messy social relationship you stop trying to save. Maybe it's a tiny typo in a report. Psychologist Carl Rogers once spoke about unconditional acceptance. When you truly accept that the world is naturally imperfect and full of flaws, you stop trying to become some kind of savior. You begin to realize that sometimes beauty exists because of the cracks. And your job is not to patch every hole, but to learn how to walk peacefully through an imperfect world. So after hearing all this, what kind of fixer do you think you are? Do you fix things out of pure curiosity? Or are you quietly exhausting yourself by carrying everyone's problems as a survival mechanism? Apex would really love to hear your story. What's the hardest thing you've ever tried to fix? A broken device or another person's emotions? Share your experience in the comments. Apex is always here to talk with you. And no matter who you are, remember this. Being good at solving problems is a strength, but don't let it turn you into a slave to control. You do not need to be constantly useful in order to deserve love and appreciation. If this video helped you understand yourself, or someone close to you, a little better, give Apex a like and subscribe so we can keep exploring the hidden folds of the human mind together. I'm Apex. Keep using your abilities to improve your life, but also learn to accept the things that cannot or do not need to be fixed. Because sometimes allowing things to break naturally is actually the most important maintenance your nervous system can receive. Live fully in the present moment, and goodbye for now. See you in the next video.